Hi folks, and welcome to my video on painting a driver figure for my Tamiya Dark Impact on the DF03 chassis. This driver actually came with my Renault 5 Turbo, but I want to fit a full cockpit in that, so I've decided to use it in the Dark Impact instead. So let's see how I go about painting it then. And we're starting off with the second coat of red, and I'm still trying to be quite careful even though this is the first paint on the driver figure completely, because at the minute I hadn't decided what colour to do with his racing harness or his gloves, but normally I would have probably done those first, because I ended up going for yellow on the racing harness and white for his gloves. So as you can see, I'm trying to keep away as much as possible from his racing harness and the background that I'll do black later. This being the second coat, I'm going over and I'm trying to get an even coat and get rid of any light white spots where I may have missed or not covered on the first coat. So I think after this bit, I think we'll speed it up a bit for you. I'll now set that aside and let it dry, and I'll move on to the second coat of the helmet. And as you can see here, I'm doing it gold, and in a second when I turn it round you'll see that I have actually masked the face part off so that I don't get any gold on the face of the driver, because my flesh coloured paint doesn't cover very well, so I'm trying to keep that as white as possible. And I found these Tamiya metallic paints seem to dry really quickly, so you have to brush on quite quickly, as you can see here, otherwise you get like splodges, and it's really difficult to flatten those out if you leave it too long. And again, once I've finished and checked and I'm all happy, then I'll set that aside to dry and move on to the next thing. I'm now moving back onto the driver figure and starting to paint the yellow harness, or the harness in yellow. And as you can see there, although I've just taken my finger off, I'm using a combination of my little finger and ring finger on my right hand to steady the paintbrush while I'm painting, and I'm doing my best to stay away from the red of his racing suit. I'm trying to match up and make sure I go over any white bits as well, and I'm now running out of things to say on this bit, so I think we'll go to speeded up montage. And that's the first coat done, and I'll put that aside and leave it to dry again, and we can go on and find something else to do, which I think might be starting to paint the face. And yes, here we go. I've got another quite a small brush here, and my own mix of skin tone. As you'll see as we go on, there's very little skin tone in this one, because the driver's wearing a fireproof balaclava. The brush I'm using here is 000, one of the smallest ones I've got, and now the eyes have finished. I can put that to one side, let that to dry, and we can move on to the steering wheel. And for this I'm using a Humbrol acrylic paint, which is supposedly leather effect. And again, I'm using a fairly small, I think it's the 000 brush, it might be a 00 for this one. And as you'll see as we go on, I paint the wheel itself in the leather, and then I think I go over the, oops, dropped it there, metal parts with some silver. Because of the intricacies of the steering wheel, and the fact that it's already glued onto the driver's hands, it took me that long to paint it. There's that much video in this because basically I ran the video through the whole of this painting process that I'm just going to have to cut a shed load out, otherwise you'll be watching it for hours. And here I am putting the finishing touches on the leather Luke steering wheel, and once it's finished, pop it to one side and let it dry, and then we'll move on to start tidying up the harness. I've now changed to a smaller brush and I'm going around with some red paint again to try and tidy up the overpaint on the yellow harnesses. And again, as with most of my other painting, you'll see I'm just brushing in the one direction, sort of towards me and away from me. Just as I say that, it's always the case, isn't it? But yes, I mean, a lot of it does depend on how you can get at the bit that you want to paint. But each time I only go in one direction and then lift off before starting another bit. I've now moved on to doing the whites of his eyes, and as you can see I've got a cocktail stick with a blob of paint on, and I'll just try and touch that on and hopefully let it flow into the contours of the moulding. It doesn't always work so well, and as you can see there, it wasn't running that brilliantly, so I was spreading it. But once I've done that, I'll let the thing dry and then I can go over with either a bit more white, or in a lot of cases I end up going over with the skin tone again just to try and tidy it all up. Once both eyes were done, I then moved on to the balaclava, and again I'm painting that white. I suppose I could have left it the white plastic, but as I've got the white out already, I decided to give it a couple of coats. And there we have one painted balaclava. I've now started painting the black that I'm going to be using on the helmet, and as you can see I'm doing this freehand with a fairly long bristled brush, and I do recommend anybody that hasn't done this before, just give it a go, guys. As you can see, I'm not masking anything off. It's all freehand, but let's be honest, guys, who's going to see it when it's racing around a track or on the grass? So I'd say give it a go if you've never tried this before. You might surprise yourselves. As you can see here, I've already started the eyes. Sorry I can't show you that bit, but as you can tell from that little view there, my magnifying visor got in the way when I first started this, and I had no idea, and to be honest, you're just lucky that it didn't quite get in the way on that bit. But as you can see, I use a cocktail stick and I dip it in the paint, and then just try and lightly touch it on the white part of the eye until it's covered, and I keep going like that until I'm happy. And the last step is 2 coats at least of matte varnish over the top of his racing suit and the background and everything. Weirdly, the silver buckles still do kind of stay glossy even with the coat of varnish, but yeah, I do this partly to protect the paint, but also because the red I'd got was a gloss and I didn't think it looked right being so shiny on a racing suit. So there we go, we're just doing the 2 coats over the whole of the driver figure. I put 2 coats of a gloss varnish on the helmet itself, and then we just need to screw the head on, and we should all be finished and ready to go in the car. And here we have the finished piece. It's all painted and varnished, and as you can see, I've also added some spare decals off the Dark Impact build. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed watching and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers, bye.